1.
You will hear a man called Tim and a woman called Laura discussing preparations for their holiday. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 6.
Our plane tickets arrived this morning. It reminded me how much there is to do before we go.
Let's write everything down, shall we, so we don't forget anything?
Yes. And last time we went away, we almost forgot to collect our currency from the bank. So let's start with that.
Good thinking. And wasn't there an appointment you said you'd got to cancel?
Yes, the hairdresser. Thanks for reminding me. Can you write that down too? The shop will be closed now, but I'll do it first thing on Monday.
OK. Then starting on Tuesday, we've got to take the tablets we got from the pharmacy. We really mustn't forget to do that. We're not protected against malaria till we've been taking them for at least 7 days.
No, so that's really important.
And what about shopping? There's still a few things we've got to buy the next time we're in town. We need some more sunblock, don't we? We've only got that factor 10 stuff. It won't be strong enough.
I've already bought that. But what we do still need to get is sunglasses. The ones I've got aren't good enough, and I don't think yours are either.
OK, I've noted that down. And I think I'm going to get another bag too, just a small one. We always seem to come back with more things than we take.
Shall we get an extra lock for our suitcase as well, just in case the one we've got breaks? They don't seem to last long.
Yes, they are a bit flimsy. OK, right. Oh yes, and we need an adapter for our electrical things, your hairdryer and my shaver. The plugs on them are bound to be the wrong type.
We could get one at the airport. They always have them there.
Well, I'd rather get it beforehand, so I'm writing it down. And then I think that's it, isn't it?
I think so, as far as shopping's concerned. But we also need to order a taxi to take us to the airport. We should do that well in advance. My sister left it too late and she had to take the train with that huge suitcase of hers.
I know, she really struggled with it.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10.
Now, let's see. Your mother said she'd come in regularly while we're away, so what do we want her to do? I'll write some instructions and we can give them to her tomorrow.
Good idea. Well, the cat's the main thing.
OK. Feed the cat.
We ought to leave her the vet's details as well, just in case there's a problem.
Yes. Have you got them handy?
Hang on, I'm just looking. Yes, his name's Colin Jeffrey.
Is that spelt with a G?
Actually, it's Jeffrey. Quite an unusual spelling, isn't it?
And his number?
077 594 128. It's a mobile.
OK.
And you should write down where it is. It's 4th Street, not sure what number, but it's next to the bus stop, isn't it?
That's not a very good landmark, but it's on the other side of the road to the church, so I'll tell her that. Let's hope she won't need a vet anyway.
Yes. Right, apart from that, there are the plants to water. Ask her to make sure they don't dry out.
Oh, yes, and I've already mentioned the problem with the boiler, and your mum said she'd come round to meet the heating engineer and let him in.
Yes, it's a lot for her to do, but we really need to get the problem sorted out. and the earliest date I could get an appointment was April the 30th.
Isn't it the day after we go?
Yes, we leave on the 29th, and she'll have to hang around till the job's finished.
Oh, well, she won't mind, I'm sure. She likes helping people out.
Yes, she does.
OK. That's it then, I think. Unless you can think of anything else.
Not at the moment. Leave the list there and I'll add to it.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2. Cut 2.
You're going to hear a radio broadcast called Postbag. First, look at questions 11 to 16.
Welcome, and indeed welcome every Friday afternoon at 2:15 to Postbag, your chance as listeners to let us know what you think about our programs and current issues. This week, our Postbag has been virtually overflowing. Not that we are complaining, mind you. Many of you, in fact, a staggering 4,373 of you, to be precise, have completed Radio South's listener phone-in survey. Some general points. 83% of you think that the radio station has improved over the past year, and only 7% that it has got worse. Most of you think that the radio station provides an excellent service. That's a big thumbs up for Radio South. Some more statistics. A rather disappointing 64% of you did not like the start of the new international radio soap that began on Wednesday evenings last month. Many of you said that it was too vulgar and puerile, with no plot, no excitement, and only 17% said they liked it. We passed on your messages to the producer, and he said that he had received a number of letters and countless phone calls saying how innovative and modern the plot was. In fact, those figures for those listening had more than doubled for the second program. We'll have to wait and see how this one develops. And for 87% of you, the new starting time of 5 a.m. for the wake-up show went down really well. Only a small disapproval rating for this one. In fact, only 3%. Many of you said the earlier time is a real hit. Unfortunately, the wine show has not gone down well at all. It had a 15% approval rating and 25% who did not like it and 60% don't knows. Sadly, the main comment was that the program is downright boring. Maybe wine's going out of fashion. The full survey will be published next month and it is free on request. And now to our weekly letter slot.
Before the radio broadcast continues, look at questions 17 to 20. For these questions, there are 4 alternatives, A, B, C and D. Decide which alternative is the most suitable answer for what you hear and circle the appropriate letter.
Sharon from Tasmania has written in to say that she has tried to get through on the telephone to our new message line to leave a message on the voice box, but she finds it too complicated. She says, and I quote, Every time I press a number after the main menu, the line won't accept my message. It's so frustrating. Maybe your voice box should come with a health warning. Well, I can tell you that you're not the first person to have complained about this. In fact, we had 67 letters this past week alone, and complaints have been going up at the rate of 10% a week recently. And we're now looking into the problem. On a more cheerful note, Mary from Sydney, Australia, wrote in to say how refreshing and cheerful she found our station. She says the music and the morning wake-up show she finds really invigorating. We've had lots of similar letters from all around Southeast Asia saying the same thing. From Terry in Auckland, New Zealand, Yuko in Japan, and Ahmed in Indonesia. Robin in Australia says it's really an excellent new contribution to the radio scene in the area and encourages us to keep going. Thank you, Robin, for your support. Pangaporn from Thailand wants to know if there are any plans to repeat the English language program, English Worldwide, on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m, or whether we are going to expand the program. We've had so many letters over the past week about English Worldwide. It appears to be hugely popular. Since it started 5 weeks ago, the number of people tuning in has grown tenfold. There are no plans at the moment to increase the 2-hour slot on Friday morning, but if numbers keep increasing at the rate they are, we may have to. Many of you have asked when we are becoming a 24-hour service. The answer is as soon as we can. We now broadcast 19 hours a day and hope to be on air 24 hours a day within the next 6 months. And now it's over to Marco, who's going to look at the latest cinema and video releases.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Part 3.
You will hear 2 undergraduates doing a research methods course. A girl called Leela and a boy called Jake having a seminar with their tutor. Now you have some time to look at questions 21 to 24.
So the task I gave you both was to choose an article about a small-scale research project.
Yes.
You were then required to try to reproduce the research procedures in your own context, i.e. try it out for yourselves.
Yeah, and that's what we've done.
Great. So I'd like you to tell me a bit about the article and why you chose it.
Well, the article's written by 2 university lecturers who had started using crosswords to help their students revise terminology for exams.
And the crosswords were designed and set on computers.
And we selected the article because, well, it seemed an accessible topic, even though we weren't familiar with the technique. You know, using IT to design crosswords for higher education.
That's a good reason. So these lecturers wanted to see how well this innovation was received by their students.
Yes.
So how did you go about reproducing the research?
Well, we drew up a list of terms from one of our own modules and designed a crossword for revising these terms.
Then we asked our classmates to try out the crossword and give us feedback, you know, their opinions on how they felt about using the technique.
Was it easy to find participants?
It wasn't easy at first, but then we convinced them that by taking part in the research, they were actually benefiting themselves by preparing for an exam, which is coming up later this term.
And it worked.
Good. So how did you find out what the students thought about doing the crosswords?
a questionnaire. The original article used a 2-page long questionnaire. There were lots of excellent questions on it, but the whole section on difficulties using IT is now obsolete. Old-fashioned, even though it had only been written a couple of years ago.
So you designed a shorter version?
Yeah. Then we sent it to the 40 students by email and got 28 replies. I was taken aback by the fact that everybody we talked to thought this was a good return. I mean, the responses were well written. You know, people had taken a lot of care, but I was really disappointed with the low numbers.
Yes, an important lesson to learn for an apprentice researcher.
Yeah.
Now you have some time to look at questions 25 to 30.
So what results did you get?
Well, basically, the responses were extremely positive. The students said that doing the crossword on a computer helped them really focus on the work in hand and not be distracted, which is something that commonly happens with other ways of doing revision.
Yeah, that was really clear. But something that struck me was that having fun hardly featured in their responses, nor did anything to do with spelling of hard words, which I thought would be an obvious benefit.
No? Okay.
Respondents also said that doing the crossword hadn't really increased their general motivation to study, but that it had highlighted the gaps in their memory so they knew what further work was necessary.
Right. So how did your findings tally with those of the original researchers?
There were lots of similarities, but...
There were probably two main differences. We found that more males than females liked the technique, whereas the original study found the reverse.
Also, our respondents said they wouldn't mind doing a crossword as a final official exam, whereas in the original study, students said they would hate doing it even if it meant having a shorter test.
But of course, both sets of respondents said they'd be interested in doing more crosswords for informal purposes, revision, and so forth.
Right. So let's have a think about the whole project and what you've learned from doing it.
Well, it was very time-consuming.
Yeah, and I don't think we managed that aspect very well.
It could have been worse. I mean, we didn't have a lot of data, so we didn't have to spend ages processing it. And of course, we'd already done a course on numerical data processing, so there wasn't much new there.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, I think we designed our questions well so that they gave us manageable data.
Yeah, it really helped having the original study to guide us, as it were. And that helped us to see what a good research instrument is.
What a good questionnaire should be like.
Absolutely. We got a lot from that. But when we were writing up the project, I'm not sure whether we'll know how to acknowledge the work of the original study. You know, our referencing.
No, that's something we'll both have to work on in the future.
Actually, that part's been great. Finding ways to share and support another person.
That's the real plus from the project, learning ways to do that.
Well, it's obviously been very successful.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You're going to hear a lecture delivered by an actress on the difficulties that actors and actresses experience after graduating. First, look at questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon to you all again, and thanks for coming for the second lecture in the series, Drama After Graduating. For those of you who weren't here last week, my name is Jennifer Mackenzie Davis, and I'm one of those lucky ones, an actress with a job. I'm going to talk to you today about the difficulties actors and actresses face finding work. Not that any of you need reminding. It's a jungle out there, and you've got to be very hungry to survive. Are you hungry? Well, I'm afraid you're going to have to be, because if you aren't, you might as well pack your bags and forget all about acting as a career. And not just hungry, but also resolute in getting what you want. And of course, persistent. Not to mention gifted. Between 80 and 90% of you will be out of work at any one time. You are joining a group of people whose average time in employment is 12 weeks a year for men and 7 weeks for women. Why do we do it? We must be mad. And yet there are thousands more waiting to take our places if we fail. Still hungry? Good. Because this is where the interesting bit starts. Now we've got the stats out of the way. First of all, where do you look for work? Well, there's the Stage Door, the weekly newspaper which occasionally has a couple of decent jobs in it. And then there's the weekly list of jobs called TCR. But you need to subscribe to that with friends. It's very expensive, especially if you're out of work. About £20. No, sorry, £25 for 5 weeks. Then there's your agent. You'll discover sooner or later that you need an agent if you want to have access to the best work available. But how do you get an agent? Well, unless you're really very lucky and get taken on by an agent who just likes the look of you, you have to get an agent to see you in a live performance. This could be a good part in a play which shows off your talents, or a film role, or just a show reel of you performing your best speeches. I must say, I don't really know which is harder. Getting the part without an agent in the first place, or getting an agent interested enough to come and see you. In other words, a real catch-22 situation. A word of warning. They don't usually travel more than a few hundred yards from their office. They're supposed to be working for you, but they actually behave like it's the other way round. As for showreels, if you want them to look at yours, you really need to tie them to a chair and force them to watch. You may find it difficult to get work without an agent, but it will be well nigh impossible without an equity card. Fortunately, things have changed. In the past, drama school students leaving here in July had what was known as a registered graduate equity card. This gave you 2 years to get an equity contract for work. Not that easy without experience, an agent or a full equity card. But even when you got your first job paid at equity rates, you received only a provisional equity card. The union was quite strict about membership, but the alternative was much harder and less likely to result in success. This provisional card could become a full one only after 30 weeks of work. Without it, you could forget the West End theatres, top tours and work in television. Now, however, things are a bit easier. After you finish from here, you automatically get your equity card. The downside of this is obviously that there are more people chasing the same number of jobs. But even before you start worrying about equity cards and your agent, you've got to establish yourself with photographs. Eye-catching and professional black and white photos, small postcard size for your publicity and CVs. There will be several sessions devoted to choosing the right photos that will show you off the way you are most likely to be cast. And also what to put in your CV and, more importantly with some of you, what not to include. So you see, it's not an easy road to fame and fortune. This has just been an introduction to the trials and tribulations of actors looking for work. Next week we'll make a start on CVs, but now it's time for a 10-minute tea break, followed by a question and answers session.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.